Welcome to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's going on in the yoga and wellness world and what's been going on with our clients. What are we seeing on our coaching calls? I'm Terri. I'm a coach here at the YC. I'm here with my awesome colleagues, Bridget, our newest coach, and Josh Biro, our fearless leader. And so before we got on, Bridget and I were talking about money, 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 and what happens when you're not managing that money. Take it away, Bridget.
Yeah, I was telling Terri, and I actually do think I mentioned this on a roundup in the last month. We might have dipped in, so I'll try and like put us in a direction that we didn't talk about as much last time. But I myself, for my own studio, hired a new bookkeeper. It has been a really long journey. I've had many bookkeepers over the years, and uh it's hard. It's really hard to get started because it's hard to part with any money when you're a new studio and you want to do everything you can to avoid that is sometimes the mental trap you can get into is like I want to do everything I can myself um to avoid paying for something uselessly when I have so little of this money to go around at first. And one of those things I foolishly thought I could do myself was my bookkeeping. And I know that some people can. I totally believe Terri, sounds like you did your own bookkeeping. That's
Up
amazing.
until, I'll talk about that in a sec, but up
Yeah,
until, yes.
do. So anyway, I eventually did need to get one. I've had many. I've had some bookkeeper slash accountants, I've whatever. And I finally was like, this is costing me money, having a cheap bookkeeper that doesn't know what they're doing. It's costing me money and like extra fees that I was having to pay to my accountant to like clean things up. It's costing me money because I'm not looking at the big picture well enough because it's just not broken down in a way that makes sense to me. And the reality is, yes, I was seeing my P&Ls, but deep down, did I really trust them? Not really, because I didn't really trust my bookkeeper. So anyway, I hired someone who's specific to the industry, and it's been amazing. It's so much more expensive than my cheap bookkeeper that was doing nothing for me. But I just had my first like official meeting with her yesterday, and it was amazing. Like it just felt like so worth it. The decision was completely confirmed and worth every penny. Josh.
Oh, what triggered for me is when you said like she's so much more expensive. And
Mhm.
that was an experience that I went through too. But worth every penny just for the
Right.
peace of mind alone. And so, what I would say for a new studio, and actually, I had a conversation last week with Pilates studio. Pilates and something else, maybe bar, but whatever. This came up, and the bottom line was like, not only did they have no financial plan, it was like her sister was kind of doing the bookkeeping for her on like a Google spreadsheet, but wasn't actually a bookkeeper. It was like she was dabbling in, I kind of want to get into this because I do my own personal stuff. And that had created tension between them and blah, blah, blah. So, long story short, the recommendation that I was saying was like either just define what you need in a bookkeeper, which I'll tell you what it is in a second, or I actually think you could do it yourself, and that would be smart and empowering as a business owner. The realistic scenario, though, is at some point, that's one of the first things to delegate because it requires not just like actual times, it's not actually that many hours per month, but it's like the level of energetic focus that's required for it. Um, that's and there's people that's their profession, so like that's a good thing to delegate. But the point being, in both cases, whether you're doing it or you hire it out, what I see is if it's neither of those, is the owners just have no fucking clue what's going on. They don't like what's your total expense load per month? What's your burn rate? Like, I don't know. Like, what were your total expenses for last year? Oh, I would have to not look it up. I would have to email them and wait a week to get the answer. I'm like, what? Like how is that possible? you know? And so it like not knowing the number is one thing, although I feel like you should have a good idea on an average level. But the fact that you can't just immediately access it, that's a whole another hiccup. And Terri, you say this the best. It's like if you have a bookkeeper or an accountant, it's even a better example, and you're like, what is this? What is that? Or I need to know this number or that. And they can't explain it to you in clean, plain English immediately, fire them. Like it's not even any shade on them, the person. It's just that it's the nature of that profession is that someone who's exceptional at the technical, put it in the books, categorize it, organizing it, and even enjoys that work is not necessarily inherently good at communicating what they're doing. And as an owner, that's what you actually need. I'd rather have a bookkeeper, this sounds weird, who's like kind of not as good, but follows direction and is super crystal clear in communicating what's happening. So at least we're in sync on like this category means this, and that was the dollar amount that we allotted there. Like that, I don't know. So
What I've talked about before to dovetail off of that is if particularly if again we've talked about this for predominantly women, and if you don't have any experience with any finances beyond like your own bank account, is you shouldn't, if they're making you feel stupid, then that's not someone you want to work with. If you ask a question and you can tell if they're being condescending or what and dismissive, then find someone who is like, if you ask a question and you generally don't know, it's going to explain it to you. Oh, no problem. Here's the thing. That's actually, so I had what I did my own books for years. However, I think I've told this story years ago when I started working for my dad as an adult after college, when I came back after college. And he was talking to me about something, and I just had this deer, and he goes, that's it. You're going back to the community college, MPC, Monterey Peninsula Junior College, where I went for 2 years. You're taking bookkeeping. I said, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. He said, you can't tell me what to do. I said, yes, I can. I'm your father. I can always tell you what to do. And so I went back and I took 2 semesters of basic. He said, I don't want accounting. I want you to take basic bookkeeping. And it was one of the best things I did. So and then when I was in corporate America, they did some like financial training with us in terms of P&Ls and balance sheets. So I had a basic skill set that I was comfortable doing my own books. I did not do my own taxes though. I had a CPA. I was not that stupid. So I would do my books, and then once a quarter, my CPA would go in. We would talk about it, making each, and then we would have our annual or biannual review. What are your goals? How are you working towards it? So that was a good thing. And then it got to the point where it was taking me more time, and that's when I actually got a professional bookkeeper. It turns out that Bridget went with mine, and I got into the profit first. Which if you haven't checked out, definitely check it out. We've talked about it a number of times. And so the bookkeeper I came is she's profit first certified. So that's how I ended up with Shannon. But my point being is that when I was first interviewing CPAs, I had 2 recommendations. One was a woman, one was a man. And the other thing is I knew from the get-go that I wanted to set up as an S Corp. I had done some research and I didn't want to do LLC. I wanted to be an S Corp because I wanted the extra liability shield, and I wanted to be an employee. Because when you're an S Corp, you as the owner are an employee of your organization. And so there's some things there that help out. So I talked to the first guy, says, why would you want to do that? You don't make enough money. It's ridiculous that you want to be an S Corp. That's stupid. I wouldn't recommend that at all. Well, first off, he completely dismissed.
yeah, instead of explaining it or asking a question about
He
it.
just said, oh, that's stupid. And then the other woman who actually also had experience with fitness businesses, she was like, that's interesting. Tell me why. Tell me why. And I told her, and she goes, okay, I could see that. She said, normally, as business is small, I would not recommend that. However, based on what you told me, let's do it.
Yeah.
I've had so many mean bookkeepers and
Yeah.
accountants. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. I
I
even
know.
said that to these new people who I just hired. I actually don't think I've ever had a nice bookkeeper until these people that I have now, and I can't believe it. It's like actually such a healing experience talking to her yesterday because like I would be like, I know this sounds stupid, but, and she was like, that's not stupid. I was like, okay, you're right, it's not stupid. Um, it is so crazy. I also just wanted to say you can be an LLC with an S corp designation as like on your taxes, which is what I do. Um,
Okay.
and you can do all those same things. You are an employee of your business and stuff. Just in case anyone's confused and they're like, I'm an employee, but I'm an LLC.
Yeah.
You can set it up that way, at least in California. I don't know what the deal is anywhere else.
Yeah, and there's definitely different. Yeah, yeah. And that's an important thing to understand too, is how do you want to organize?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if particularly if you're starting out, how do you want to organize? And that's where you need to either do your research or talk to people that are in the business that can explain it to you in ways that you understand. And so, I mean, I have a client who's she's not even an LLC. And I'm like, I was like, you really may want to talk to somebody about becoming at least an LLC. Josh,
She's just a proprietor.
she's a proprietor.
Yeah. We actually, so in the last studio, there were a couple weird things that in the beginning of the setup and the loans and a grant that we got a woman in business grant. I'm obviously not a woman, so Jenna got it. And so, but in order to even apply, I had to not be an owner in any way, shape, or form of the business. So actually, the business was set up as a proprietorship in her name. And it was like way too long before we switched it because we were being cheap. We didn't want to do the expense. But then we were smart and did it. And had we have not, the capital gains ding on the sale at the end, like we would have lost basically all the margin on the sell or like more than half of it immediately. And instead we lost nothing at all. Like just those little things. But that tangent aside, I just want to highlight we're actually talking about 3 or 4 completely different things here though as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One is just the bookkeeping. And so for me at this point, and I would tangent this comment too, like a couple years back, I literally considered becoming an American bookkeeper certified because it's so prevalent that I'm like, studios need a fucking bookkeeper. And we didn't have anyone to send them to. And everyone we tried to partner with and stuff was just so bad to do business with that whether they were good at bookkeeping or not, 80% of the time, I couldn't even find out because we couldn't get past just the fucking conversation about cash flow, like nothing. It was so weird. Anyways, that the bookkeeper, I think communication and understanding things and cash flow management, that's where that comes in. Then there's an accountant, different profession. If you can have one that's both, that's cool. But like accounting, now we're talking a totally different game. Taxation, then you're talking about country, state, what blah blah blah, structure, like all that comes into play. And especially in the United States, so anyone listening to this outside of the United States, it still is kind of true, but less so. The States is purely built for businesses, and how you sort of manipulate your accounting massively changes your taxation situation. Canada, probably 50% as much. Half of Europe, forget it. Like you're just in the system or whatever. But so it depends on where you are, but like you need someone who understands that game then. And that's the hard part, which means above them, you actually need a financial lawyer involved at some point. Maybe not right away, although I would definitely pay the consultation with one for structural setup if I was starting a business today, just knowing what I know. Like you need someone who like understands enough of this to really give you the absolute clarity on the setup. But then the person that never gets talked about in your average studio, 1 to 3 locations. It's not until you hit like 5, 6, 10 locations this becomes like super relevant is the CFO position. Someone who's literally has an ongoing viewpoint of how to manage the financial situation of the business. And that's inclusive of everything, your budgeting, your cash flow, your bookkeeping, your accounting, structures of things, accounts in your banks, all of that, because that is its own profession. It's not bookkeeping. Like you wouldn't want a bookkeeper that's also your CFO. That's not exactly right.
That's a different skill set.
Accounting's a different skill set too. It's its own thing altogether. And so the reason I say that is if you have just one studio in the beginning, you are automatically that role. And I think studio owners miss this and they think, oh, well, my bookkeeper knows. And they accidentally set an expectation, ask questions, or lean on their bookkeeper or accountant for questions, roles, planning, strategy that isn't that profession's job. Now, you might have found someone who's awesome, or you might be smart like Terri, you or Bridget, what you're doing now, where you make some decisions. We're doing profit first. Do you know profit first? Can you abide by it? Yes. And that's our cash flow system. But more often than not, they might not even be a bad bookkeeper technically. They might just be, you're thinking that they're one thing and they're not. It's just they're in a totally different seat than what you think they are.
I was gonna ask, I have heard, speaking of CFOs, I've heard of companies doing like a shared CFO. Do you guys know?
Fractional
Yeah,
CFO. Yeah.
which does kind of make sense, like especially in a smaller business. Have you guys heard of studios doing something like
Yeah.
that and kind of outsourcing that?
Yeah. Yeah. We have at least three studios that I'm pretty sure are doing it even right now. We almost partnered with a guy. I almost hired him actually because he did businesses like also coaching and stuff like that. The one, it makes sense. There's fractional CMOs out there. There's fractional CROs now. That's a really common thing. And then
What are
there's
these?
fractional sorry, chief. Okay, so CMO, chief marketing officer. Basically, it's a person who's doing all of your strategy planning, whatever for your marketing. Once you're at, again, 5+ locations, that person makes sense because you still don't have the finance to pay a full CMO that's really a rock star,
Yeah.
but you kind of need someone overseeing it, and it probably requires a knowledge skill set that you no longer have. So that's where that gets really interesting because it's not cheap, but it's half price of what you would have got if you hired someone at the same skill level. CRO is your chief revenue officer. That's sales. That's the person who runs your sales team. And so same thing. That we often in the studio world, it gets the thought gets blended that sales and marketing are the same, and they are very, very different.
Yeah.
And then so CFO, your chief financial officer, then the one we're talking about there. Here's the
Another one. There's one other one, Josh, that I think can be important too, is HR. Outsourcing your
actually,
HR.
yes, that's true. And that would be, honestly, that would be the first one. I would find a fractional HR department, or they often don't call themselves fractional. Like that's not the term they use. It's just a HR service or whatever.
HR service, yeah.
That would probably be the first one. If your studio's doing, this is just off the top of my head, it's not a perfect science, but like if you're doing 750,000 in revenue and you've got 15 to 20 teachers and 4 or 5 front desk and some cleaners involved, and then like some other random manager positions or something like that, that's the time to start looking at that.
Or, actually even it can be sooner, depending
Oh,
upon.
you can do it way earlier. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying at that moment, it's very probable that at some point you will encounter the scenario where multiple HR equations happen simultaneously, and it'll completely derail all other work for you in those moments. Whereas if you have this department there, then like doesn't matter, you're fine.
Particularly here in the States, depending upon the state you're in too. Like a state like California or New York or Massachusetts, states like where the employment laws are much different than some of the other states, it can make a lot of sense to have an HR person who understands all of those intricacies, can help with the onboarding, the offboarding, could be there. I had a client that has one, and when they needed to let go of a staff person, it was like they're the ones that did it, so it can really make it easier in that because with the HR stuff, it's just the human stuff, and that's where it can get, not that numbers can't get messy for sure, but it's the human messiness that tends to derail us, I think, energetically more than just about anything else.
Well, Yeah, energetically for sure, but from an
Yeah.
HR department perspective and the United States specifically, Canada too, this is a thing, other countries too, but the culture of employment in the United States currently is such that even people you think are your besties will absolutely fuck you if you do it wrong without blinking an eye. And I say it that harshly because we've literally seen it 100 times in the last like even just 2 years. It's and
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
almost every time it is ridiculous. Not that there's no technical grounds that the employee has or that the owner never messes up, but the ridiculousness is what you're talking about, Terri. Like the communication, it's like all of this could have been avoided if things were just done right in the first place in like simple stuff, actual contract and agreement in place, clarity on what this is, communication, like just basic shit.
Yeah.
Fractional CFO, here's the I can comment on all of these, but that one specifically, here's the one thing that is a little bit tricky. This is, I would say, my opinion rather than like some factual thing. If I'm an awesome CFO, the only reason for me to start a fractional CFO service would be because it lets me increase my earnings per year by having a small number of people that I feel like I can manage that business in. Let's say I'm going to have four. So 25% of my total time could go to that business. And 4 times my fee would be at least 2 times what I would just get as a CFO. Like a CFO position is a well paid, very serious position. So, like, if you're just not able to get that job, I would be just ever so not skeptical, but like you've got to like ask a really serious question, like why is this the case? And so I don't know. I would just kind of say that's the warning with it, that you can't just find someone and hire them. You have to really like pay attention for a second.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
in the world of tech layoffs and AI and everything else, that being said, there are a lot of displaced people in those types of roles. And there are a lot of people who are young and hungry and they're trying to get those roles, but they don't have the experience to even apply for some of these jobs. So like that's who I'd look for. I'd look for the 26-year-old who's got, an accounting degree and a bachelor of
Fine.
business and did a CFO thing and has just 2 years of experience, but like can't get another job and they're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna hustle 60 hours a week and I'll take 6 clients. And like that's who you want,
Or
maybe.
it could be, it also could be someone my age
That's true. That's
who's
true.
retired and
Yep.
like, I still want to dabble. I'm like, 60 is the new 40 or 70 is the new 50, right? I still want to do this. And so maybe you have someone that worked at a Fortune 500 who now is like, hey, I want to help small
Yep.
businesses. I don't need to make what
Yep.
so, that's the other
That's
thing,
true.
you
That's
know,
very true.
like, that's where, like in the United States, when you're starting out, there's a great resource called SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives. So
Oh,
it's called SCORE, and retired
Hmm.
executives, they donate their time in their field of expertise. So like if you want help with a marketing plan or there's a lot of local SCORE. It's a nationwide uh,
Gore.org. I just looked it up. Huh,
yeah,
interesting. I haven't heard of
yeah.
it.
Service Corps of Retired Executives. These
Yeah.
are people that are thought leaders and successful leaders in their fields, areas of expertise. And it's a great resource. Again, SCORE as SBA, Small Business Administration, although with everything going on with the Doge, who knows if it's going to, be around. But there's a lot of other resources. There's lots of resources right now for small business in the United States. So yes, put it in your SCORE.
Hmm.
that's cool, Terry. I'm gonna look into that. Okay, so if we were gonna summarize, like, what are our bottom line, like, takeaways for studios if they're like
Yep.
sitting here being like, okay, this is me. I have no idea what's going on, whatever. Like, what is something they can do today?
Yep. I got it. Terri will pipe
Admit
in
that
too.
they have a problem. The first thing to admit
the
that they
first
have a
step.
problem. They got to
You
be
have a
willing to
problem.
make a change. The first thing is,
Yeah.
Get
yeah,
to admitting
there's a
basic.
problem, and yes, I need to make a change. And that's the first thing, because we've encountered clients who don't even want to admit there's a problem. They don't want to admit it, make it.
Yeah, they won't even look. They won't look
They
at it.
won't even,
I
they're
mean,
off their head in the sand, and they're like, all I want to do is teach yoga.
I just need more people in the doors.
I
Yeah.
just need more people in the door.
Yeah. Or there's also the situation, and this might ping for some people, is like they don't deliberately have their head in the sand. They're like blissfully naive. It's like there's a whole department area of your business that would massively impact your potential growth, and you're just oblivious to it completely. Like you're not looking at it because you just have never thought to look at it. It's not your natural proclivity. So conversations like this, you suddenly go, huh, and you can like become aware all of a sudden and realize, is this something there? If you're in that group, the indicator personally will be you will not feel like any of this is a problem. You're going to hear all of this and be like, I don't have this problem. And I'm telling you right now, the reason you don't have that problem is because you're profitable. If you're just profitable enough, because here, and actually the perfect description of this is you're in this like, oh, that's what it's called, the beta region paradox. You're in the beta region where it's not bad enough that like you fucking have to fight and change something because otherwise you're in trouble. And it's not good enough that it's so good you're like ramped up, hiring, scaling, we're making bank. You're just in the like, I'm making it by and the business paid for my car and I'll just complain about it to my private friends, not really love it and slowly burn out over a 10-year time horizon, but not actually get anywhere. That's the terrible place to be. And so that's where often this financial stuff is like, that's where that category of just like, I'm just not even looking at it at all.
Yeah.
And so because it literally doesn't feel like it's a problem, because you can't say, oh, if I paid 3 times as much and got the right bookkeeping person and accountant, like how does that make me more money? You can't directly correlate that, but that is actually, in fact, what happens if you do it right. Okay, hang on though, Terri, before you jump back in. What do you
No.
do practically?
Yeah,
If I was
steps.
if step one, if I'm coaching a studio, org chart. Like it's a baby step. You could literally today do this.
Yeah. Org chart.
Put
Terri
look
just
at
made a
your
post
look.
about org charts, so you can
I,
reference it.
I've done lots of posts about org charts, but yes, I can talk about
Look
this.
at your org chart and just based off of what we're saying, go on there. You're gonna need. There's gonna be a financial branch on your org chart. Do you even have one at all? Like it's not should your org chart have a financial branch? It does. Put it on. And then in that financial branch, you have to put at least these 3 seats: CFO or like financial strategy, accounting, bookkeeping. They are 3 different seats. You cannot put them together. One person is allowed to sit in all 3, but you have to define them as separate roles in your business. Just start there, and immediately things start to get clearer, because then the second part of that is, well, what would this role or seat be responsible for? Strategy, planning, cash flow, budgeting, proper accounting, tax reduction, safety, accounting for things, and like keeping the books up to date and communication so that I have my finger on the pulse of what's happening with my cash and my business at every moment. And now you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, also, are your books up to date? Are your are things in the right category? What are you doing about that? If you don't, I would say after that, if that's not something you're doing, then start looking to hire a bookkeeper.
Yeah, I would say if I said to you, this it reminds me of something one of you said earlier. If I said to you like, what were your expenses last year or even last month, and you don't know where or how to get that information,
That's a problem.
go put that into plan. There's no problems. It's just an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do so that that isn't true anymore? So that
Yeah.
you know, like, so put a plan there. Like Terri said, hire a good
Hire
bookkeeper.
a bookkeeper, or if you don't have a bookkeeping system, go and explore. Like there's Xero, there's QuickBooks. I personally love QuickBooks. In fact, this year I got so
QuickBooks. The answer is QuickBooks. I don't
QuickBooks.
even know why you'd look at anything else. Like you can use Zero and everything else. I've used like 4 of them. In the small business, Pilates, yoga, boutique fitness, wellness studio worlds, and opening up the like different opportunities of people to work with, QuickBooks is your answer.
Thing
Like
It's super easy. I mean, it's a very straightforward program. I got so tired of doing all my what this year, Josh, for 2024 taxes, that QuickBooks has a new product called the Solopreneur.
yeah,
And
I saw that.
I signed up for that to track all my YC. It's great. I do my invoice for you now and the YC for it, and then I have my own little P&L for my because my business, and all my expenses are being tracked in there, and because I'm like, screw it, I'm spending too much time doing that. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, and then QuickBooks is great. It's super easy. If you want to do your own payroll, you can add on payroll to it. And, payroll is not that it's not that difficult. It really isn't once you get it set up, and just start getting everything up to date.
What's it called? Gusto? That's the
Gusto,
payroll.
I'm
Gusto.
switching to Gusto from
Gusto.
QuickBooks Payroll. QuickBooks Payroll is a pain in my ass. I
Yeah.
do use QuickBooks for my accounting, and now I use it for payroll. But and honestly, the bookkeeper I spoke to yesterday told me to switch to Gusto.
Gusto.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I use
payroll.
That's the most popular one that we
Is that
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
several clients use Gusto and really like it because they can do a lot of like the HR, right? They can also have the whole like HR part of it too, where you can put stuff as well. But yeah, just
I haven't personally used it because I think I could be wrong at this point. I think it doesn't work in Canada. So like we couldn't use it in the studios
yeah.
there or whatever. Yeah. But that's it. And even like, yeah, just knowledge is power because it's empowering. The real power comes from actioning the knowledge.
Yeah.
But before you can action it, you got to know what the hell's going on. So finances are very often that category where you don't have to know the hyper details of like, what are we spending on toilet paper? Like at some point you can deep dive on that, but that's not what we're talking about. It's just like, what is the average, what's the minimum like expense amount per month that guaranteed we are gonna have to spend every month? What's the average actual expenses, versus MRR, stuff like that? Like these are just really simple things. Here's a huge one. What do you pay total for employees? Or you'd even separate them: managing team, front desk team, teaching team. Most studio owners cannot answer that question.
Yeah.
This same Pilates place I was talking with, if you guys listen to this, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but like that was a simple question. Like, cool, what are you paying your instructors? They're like, well, some are like this amount per class, and then this person's hourly, and that one this, and then we were thinking about this bonus that. I'm like, no, like total per month. Like, what's going out? What are you going? They're like, no idea. Never looked at it ever. And so what happens, like going back a few years, I think of a studio that came to us and they were saying like, we're just not making profit. We've been investing and putting all this effort in, and we've got like, we listened to your videos and we did this marketing budget thing and blah, blah, blah. And then I looked at their numbers and they're seeing like 300 first visits a month. Conversion rates definitely needed to be better, but Terri, they weren't like abysmal. They weren't totally terrible, right? It's like there was room for growth there, but we were like not putting something in place. We were optimizing something. There's clearly something going on. And finally, it took a minute when we finally got their P&L, because it took like a month and a half, and we looked at it. Their staffing expense was 58% of their revenue.
Whoa.
And of that, 95% of it was going to their instructors.
That's ridiculous.
And so they had this like, on the ground, the feeling was this dynamic of like these kind of prima donna instructors. I get paid so much, blah, blah, blah. On the business side of it, I'm like, this is double what it should be in a really healthy studio in our experience. And I'm telling you right now that there is almost no amount of volume you could add to this business where you're going to start to feel like it really makes profit, gets you out of debt, and then paid themselves in 5 years. Like you're just, all you've done is created a system for you to give money to your instructor team. That's it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they refused to even look at it. Like they heard me, they weren't, whatever. It was, I think, an upsetting truth. They canceled coaching 6 months later after we put some stuff in place because this kept coming up as like a hindrance amongst other things. And they just refused to, they're like, it would be too upsetting. This instructor would be mad. We would lose that instructor. I'm like, I can't push you to do this. I can just tell you that like, that's all the money that you can't invest in these other things or even pay yourself is already sitting there. Like this system won't work. Yeah, it was really unfortunate.
And the other thing is, once you do know, if you're wondering what your goals should be for certain things, this is what I did, is I knew what my monthly expenses were. I knew what my monthly expenses were. And when I bought my studio, I knew what my monthly expenses were. And I had, at that point, I had 35 auto pays that we processed manually every month because we had no computer system. So I knew what my monthly expenses were. I divided that by my membership fee. That was my first goal, is I wanted enough members to cover my monthly expenses. So if you want to keep it super simple, once you find out your monthly expenses, you want to know what your goal is, get your membership to cover your expenses. How many memberships do you have to sell to cover your monthly expenses? And then after I hit that, which was like before the end of the first year, it was like, if I wanted to get something, okay, how many memberships do I need to have to cover this? And then my whole world was like, how many people do I need to do this thing? It made it, it's super easy. I mean, if you just do that, you're probably going to be fine.
What's that financial dude? He's got like a talk show that people phone into, talks about personal budgeting stuff or whatever. He's been around for a long time. He must have originally been on like CNBC or something weird like that. I don't know. It doesn't matter. There's this statement is, I don't even know that it originates from him. I just know that Dave Ramsey. Yes. This is not an original Dave Ramsey, I'm pretty darn sure, but he says this all the time. And so he says it on the personal side, but on business too. Terri, to your point of just like, okay, I want to invest in this. How many memberships would I need for this to be a thing? The flip side of it is also knowing that like, okay, this costs me 10 memberships because my average retention is this. And so can I afford that one? But two, if I could afford it, the other check is, would I just pile up this money and put it on the floor and light it on fire? And that's like, if I'm just going to randomly be like, fuck it, I'm paying for this thing. That's your test question, just as like a gut check. And I've always loved that in business because that's how you like get over the fear of certain investments sometimes where you're like, I don't know how this is going to work out. But because I know my numbers, because I know my membership income numbers, I know that I can spend this $1,000 and not like on ads or whatever else. And if it doesn't immediately produce 2,000, like doesn't matter. It'll be a good lesson. It's worth doing it. You know, I could burn this on the floor. Obviously, I wouldn't do that because that would be idiotic. But
well, Josh, this is a really great segue into what we were talking about too before. Is you said, if I want to do this marketing thing, it's $1,000. It's like, another good point is, how much should you be spending on marketing? That's another thing we get a lot, is I don't even know how much should be spending on marketing, and how do I determine what I should be spending on marketing, and where should I put those marketing dollars? So I would say also, after you define that CFO seat, that finance seat, then another good one to define would be, in that same venue, is your marketing seat. Not the sales, but the marketing, and what's going to happen there, and what the budget's going to be there. And typically, I think it's not just our industry, but I think typically the norm for small business is 8 to 10% of your total revenue is what you should be spending in marketing. So if you do do the math, if you do $100,000 a year, you should be spending a minimum of $10,000 on an annual basis Let's
Well,
make it
or we the way we word it, 7 to 10% is
7 to
our
10%.
metric.
Yeah,
And the way we word it is like you should budget that.
budget
So
that.
if you're doing 500,000, you got a 50,000 a year potential marketing budget. You don't have to spend 50,000,
No,
but the majority of studios that we come across when we go and look at their marketing budget, one,
it's
they
like,
often don't allot the right things to marketing sometimes in their accounting or in their bookkeeping. So that's one asterisk on this. But the average for studios coming to us, single locations, when we did the case study on it, was 3%.
yeah,
Three,
that's high.
three.
That would be high. I've seen as low as like 1%.
Well, it's
It-
3% and they're counting the t-shirts that with the logos that they make.
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And they're like their website update and like whatever. Just I from a just percentage standpoint, like that's zero.
Yeah. That's zero.
Right?
Yeah.
3% for a studio like that is one member that stays on for 12 months.
Yeah.
Or four. Like it's so low. And it just then you're like, I don't know how to get people in the doors or why I'm not growing or whatever. You're like, or why my brand this or why after 15 years here, this place opened up down the street and is fucking eating my lunch. Like there's multiple reasons for this, but one of them is because you spent 15 years not marketing at all and kneecapping the budget on it. Here's my rant on marketing. I don't know. The budget like super triggering for me on this marketing stuff because
Well, I have a question. It's selfish. It's about my own things that I've been wondering about lately. So I have been looking, I've talked about this on the roundup a lot, I think, but like I have been spending um extra money. We're in the middle of like experimenting with this new marketing stuff.
All right.
Um,
Yep.
and I am just like looking at what we're gonna do. We're like basically in like a 3-month trial period with them and thinking about what that looks like on the other side and thinking about how much I can budget for it and stuff. And what I'm wondering is when I'm looking at my revenue versus my advertising budget and my marketing budget, like a big chunk of our revenue that I typically sort of in my brain and of course like on my P&Ls it has its own categories like retreats and trainings. It's a big chunk of money for us. And so um would I count that in overall? Like is that like the revenue that I'm is like my whole
I
studio?
understand.
You
Yeah.
understand? Okay.
Yeah,
I have
does
a budget for that.
do you put it in? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do I do 10% or whatever of my entire studio's revenue, or should I cut out that because technically I'm not really marketing to that, which is a whole other thing, which is like, I could definitely be marketing to that on some level.
The real answer, Terry, you go first after this, but the real answer is yes and yes.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Terry. I
So
know where you're
yeah,
going
if
with it.
I was to say, if retreats and YTTs are a major part of your income, like you're doing them routinely, then I would have a whole separate, like, here's my expenses. Ideally, track it separately. It's like, okay, I have clients who have an account, an income account that's specifically for retreats and YTTs, and then
Yeah.
the expenses against those, and then the budget against those. So if that is, and I don't know what would you define? I would say, 20 to 30% or more of your income is coming in from that, then that to me is almost like a business within a business.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not that high for us, but
yeah.
yeah, I get
Otherwise, yeah, you just would say, okay, we're going to spend this money on this. But who was I? Yeah, because like I said, particularly if I do have a client who specifically does this, and I think it was very smart of them to do, is she does retreats with a partner who's not part of her. It's not like she's a teacher at her studio. She's she's
sure.
outside of her business. So they have like a retreat business together. So the
Mhm.
retreat business is completely separate from the yoga business and
Yeah.
everything goes through that. So we
Yep.
don't put any of the income from the retreat into her studio revenue because it's treated as a separate business that we treat
Yeah,
it as. That's
the
yeah.
yeah, the yes and yes that Terry's describing, right, is if it's a significant thing and has its own unique everything, sales, expenses, whatever, best practice would be to eventually separate it out completely and therefore budget for it completely different. The other example, not in all cases, but actually very early, we often do this, is in your retail. Like
Yeah.
margin on retail is different, when and what you invest in it. And it would not be a good scenario in theory to have income from memberships paying for retail. It's not what you'd want to have happen. In fact, the reverse, you would want your retail to profit enough over time as it builds up to then like pay for the lease that you have or whatever. So
That was my goal.
otherwise,
Yeah.
right. And so like otherwise why do it? So the separation creates clarity. The reason yes and yes though is that if you're like newer or you're just actually just a kind of smaller business, maybe you're just like one location, you do one retreat a year, you do a teacher training once a year, maybe once every 2 years, and your retail's like, you've got some retail, but no, you're not a destination. You're not doing 20 grand a month in retail sales. You're doing 3 max or less, right? Like in that scenario, also don't make things complicated that don't need to be complicated. Because
Right.
in that, and here's your check. Here's your check question. If you're like, I'm just not sure, the check is this. If 100% of the purchases or the people who purchase these other things are your own membership base only, then just keep it rolled in. It's like no one will ever buy a pair of leggings from me who doesn't also have a membership with me. No one ever does like 100% of people who come to my teacher training, because there's only 4 every 2 years, are long-term students of mine. For the retreat, it's only our members that we do once a year and my own staff who just want to do a trip.
Yeah.
You could break it out, but like don't make things complicated that don't need to be. Because then your marketing budget, it's fair because you're like, yeah, I'm marketing for the brand, and this is a product that's purely just part of the one brand alone. That's it.
Yeah, you're not marketing outside of your community to fill an international treat,
No.
and people are coming from all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too, if we're kind of getting down a little bit in the weeds here, is also if you're brand new and when you're setting up your books, is keep that super simple. But in there, I would break out a little bit. Like if you do have, like I had, I had revenue, then I had retail. And I mean, like if you're doing that, then you can have a line item on your income statement, on your P&L, that's YTTs and retreat income.
I
Right.
do. Yeah.
Well, here to that point, Terri, and this goes against what I just said. It's why it's yes and yes. It's like just make a decision, But if you're doing, even if it's not super high frequency and it fits all the conditions I just said, but now you're at the point in your business, you're 3, 4, 5 years in plus, and you're like trying to really get a handle on finances. And the test or question would be, do you ever find yourself when you hear conversations like this, or if I as a coach was to ask you, Bridget, like, is your retreat profitable? What percentage of profit did you make on it? How many dollars in profit did you make? Did you equate the hours to it? And you're like, I have no idea. I know that I did a retreat and my total revenue went up. And so the better example is actually teacher trainings. Like there's this stupid ass narrative out there in the yoga world that to make money, you have to run a teacher training. If you're a yogi and you ever hear that, like that is so factually wrong. Please do not. No, the answer is no. Your memberships have to pay for themselves. But that narrative is a good thing to look at as a counterpoint to the best practice, which would be any product line that you do in the business should be profitable on its own. Running classes for your studio should be profitable. Having retail should be profitable. Running a retreat should be profitable. It's all about margin. Like if you don't understand margin, you don't understand business. And if you run a retreat and it's a wash or you lose money, like why run a retreat? Because I just like to do it. Like just tell people you're going on vacation and invite them to meet you there. Don't go through the headache of it.
Totally.
Anybody who does retreats well will tell you it is not a vacation for the people who are running the owner and the staff. It's tough. It's yes, you have fun, and yes, it's good to hang out, and it's not a vacation. And which is why this is sort of down this way is if you do have staff coming to a retreat, or something like that, have an agreement with them of what the expectations are. And it's like, this is not a vacation. This is my expectation of you. You know, I've said this to a number of my clients. It's like, you are expected to be at every event, blah, blah, you know, it's very detailed out. And if this is, and you're going to be paid this much, and this is my expectations, right? And if you're willing to do that, great. And I had one client who's like went to a teacher. She's like, no, I don't want to. She said, can I just go and teach? I just want to be able to teach some classes while I'm there. And the owner said, great, you pay for the retreat. I'll pay you to teach class. And that was perfect.
Yep.
Right? Because she didn't get a free retreat. She had to pay for it. She got a teacher discount, but she went as a participant and then helped out teaching a couple of classes.
Yeah.
Which was, and she just paid her my owner just paid her regular teaching rate. Right. So yeah.
You know, to that point, Terri, the other thing that comes up in this, it ties back to what we were talking about with like just knowing your numbers, cash flow, and then understanding margin and tracking it all properly too, is the idea of being able to look forward and make better decisions. And so retreats are an example, trainings are an example. The smaller example, though, actually, a little bit retail, are like just workshops, like just doing a workshop or whatever, where we get these ideas in the studio. We're like, oh, it's such a good idea to do this workshop for whatever. And then we have to press and say like, well, why? Like, what is the problem that it's solving, or what's the objective outcome with it? And it's totally cool to just do something for a community event alone, no problem. But very often what happens is we sacrifice a limited resource, energy and time, to put it into something that we don't understand the numbers on, and actually it loses the business money, or it just has such a low margin percentage wise, or such a low actual dollar income that it's just completely irrelevant. Like it just, a workshop's a good idea. I want it to be accessible. So I'm only going to charge $25 for this 4-hour workshop in 2 things or whatever. And I'm going to pay the teacher $380. And you're like,
yeah.
Yeah. Like literally it would be, you would make more money to just close the studio during those hours and pay no one anything. It's just so, and that, whatever, do whatever you want. But just, that's the understanding the numbers part where like,
oh God, yeah. This is
then you should be able to make those decisions. Like if you're like, I need to make another this quarter, 10,000, 20,000, like that needs to happen in my business. Let's brainstorm ideas. Let's run a workshop. Okay. What's your margin on the work, or what would the margin on the workshop need to be? Like to make 10,000, I would have to make $50 per person on a margin, which means I'm going to have to, after the teacher, like you should know those numbers that then you could make that decision. Because now you run a workshop, but you realize my workshop has to be $250.
Yeah.
Like just, I have to charge that or it literally isn't worth doing. And do I think my people will pay for that? No. Cool. Workshop's off the table. Good idea, but like there's other things we can do.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot tell you how many hours I've spent on coaching calls talking about workshops. We come up with a whole like workshop request form. Someone says, oh, I want to do a workshop. Fine, fill out this form.
Yeah.
A lot of them won't even, because we ask those questions. We ask those questions. Who's it for? What's the hook? What are they going to get out of it? It really is amazing when you start putting some thought behind a workshop. Here's another really interesting one that just came up. Talking about workshops. I have a client, this client I've been working with on this. They're having an outside their community come in and do a very popular yoga teacher in another community. And they're having this person come in and do a weekend where it's Friday, Saturday, all weekend. And part of it is he's doing a headstand workshop. Right? Okay, great.
Yep.
However, here's the thing. We've been getting very clear on what her goals, what her core values are, what her studio is about, what the type of space it is. And doing this work, we both had the same thought. It's like, then why are we doing a headstand workshop?
We don't teach headstands.
It's like, that's not
we
what
have no classes that do headstands.
Yeah, just like, that's not what we're about, because we got, so this outside instructor was like wanting to do this, and sounds like it's exactly this. It sounds like a good idea. So that's where also having clarity on what type of workshops you're going to have at your facility will also help will also help build the workshop, because if you're having, it's going to be interesting to see if people sign up for it, because they don't promote that. And I'm like, we both were like, huh. And she says, oh, I said, it's not a mistake.
It'll be a lesson of some
It'll
sort.
be a lesson.
There's no losing. You
There's
like
no
you
losing
either
here.
win or
I
you
said,
learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I said the other stuff on the weekend sounds right in line with your values. It's just like, now we know you're not. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
great exercise to do.
we're at time, so maybe I'll sort of leave us with this, and then you can close us out, Terri or Bridget. I think the one other, going back to your question, Bridget, like practically right now today, what can you do? And let's use workshops as the example because we're on the subject. You also, as the business owner, have to make some decisions. And what happens is in the beginning, you don't make decisions. Like you just, out of obliviousness. So workshops are an example where like, I never defined what a workshop is supposed to be. So then we've been doing it like this. And so maybe listening to this, you're like, okay, now I have information from what I have done. I have more clarity. I'm just going to make a decision. And from a financial standpoint, because that's been our subject, I would just say workshops are a great example where you can just make yourself a rule. And if you don't know, I'll give it to you right now. The rule being the studio must completely, after all expenses of marketing, paying the teacher, the time invested, there's the rental, the theoretical rental space, the et cetera, clear 20% on a workshop. That is a hard rule. If we can't prove that that can happen, you can't fucking run a workshop. Line in the sand, end of stuff. Like, just make a rule.
20% net profit.
Net profit after everything else is covered.
Yep.
Including your own time.
Including your hourly rate, which just invented to put together the poster and the email and the whatever else.
I actually, it's like,
all
I
of
did
it.
that. And so, look, my hand went up. So I calculated, and this is where if you do workshops, having a template and an outline so that you know certain things, and if you use Asana or something like that, you can set it up that way, is I knew for just a basic workshop, approximately, I tracked it a couple of times, how much hours of time it would take me to set it up in my body, to do the emails, to do all those things you talked about. And I billed myself out at this 5 years at $25 an hour. That's because I was doing it at, at a certain point I pass it off, but that I build that admin time out. So that's a good example of like YTTs. There's a lot of admin that goes into YTT.
Yeah.
So, so are you making money on it? So so I'll lower my hand. So so I like 20% net profit.
There's a starting point.
That's the starting point. All right. We're in agreement.
There you go.
Right,
go get your finances together. Or if you're totally cross-eyed right now and you're like, fuck, and also where do I even start? You better book a free coaching call. We'll
book a free coaching call.
We'll figure out where to help.
And come to the summit.
Definitely come to the
That's
summit.
true. Yeah.
Bridget is, I'm saying it out there, so you got to do it. Bridget is signing her own manager up.
I'm going to do it
this summer, right?
Yeah.
So her manager is going to go. So
we're just going to not do it, and her manager's going to send her this video and be like, Terri said that you were going to do this.
You told me.
I thought I was going to Mexico.
It's Ashley, right? Or Alyssa? What is it?
Ashley, yeah.
Ashley, if you're listening, Honey Yoga, San Diego, you're going to Mexico. All right. And that's a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday right here on Facebook, or subscribe to Studio Cult TV if you haven't. It's awesome. On Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you're listening from. And those of you who have asked, iTunes is coming. Everything Apple just takes a little bit longer. So those of you who are constantly giving me shit about not having Apple products, guess what? It's available on YouTube and Spotify. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.